So what if that line we draw between ancient spirituality and modern physics, what if it's not really there? In this explainer, we're going to dive into a pretty radical idea that the 12 universal laws, the ones that often sound kind of mystical, might actually be the predictive, nuts and bolts mechanics of a universe that's built from information.
Okay, this quote right here, this is pretty much the key to everything we're talking about today. It's saying, hey, what if these ancient laws aren't some kind of magical commands from on high? Instead, what if they're just the fundamental rules of physics, things like coherence and resonance? It's a huge shift, right? We're moving from mystical rules to the actual, observable mechanics of how reality works.
All right, so let's set the stage. For, literally thousands of years, cultures all over the world have talked about this set of universal laws that are supposed to govern reality. And we're talking about the deep principles that are said to be behind everything, from a single thought in your head to how whole galaxies are formed.
And what's so amazing is how consistent this is. You look at cultures that were totally separate across vast stretches of time, from ancient Hermetic texts to Kabbalah to indigenous wisdom, and the same core ideas just keep popping up. That's not a coincidence, It's a pattern, a really deep one, in how we've tried to understand the universe. And it kind of makes you think, okay, something's going on here.
So yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? These ideas have been around forever, but science has never really had a way to, grab onto them. There hasn't been a single testable framework that can unify all these spiritual principles. It's always been over there in the spiritual box, and science has been over here. But that might be about to change.
And this is where things get really interesting. This is where science steps in with a whole new way of looking at reality. There's this emerging field that's proposing that the universe isn't fundamentally built out of stuff, matter and energy. It's built on something even more basic, something called information.
And we absolutely have to give credit where it's due. This whole framework, this new lens we're looking through, it's called Informational Physics. It was developed by Kevin L. Brown, an independent researcher, inventor, and author. So let's dive into his core idea. Okay, so here's the absolute core of it. Informational physics says that the most fundamental thing in the universe isn't an atom, it isn't a wave of energy, it's a bit of information. The best way to think about it is like a cosmic operating system, like the Windows or Mac OS of reality. And everything we see, matter, energy, even our own consciousness, is like the software, the apps and files running on that deeper code.
Now, this is a really profound shift in how you look at everything. The old metaphysical view says these laws are spiritual principles, maybe even divine commands. But this new informational physics view, it says they're just the mechanics of how the system works. Suddenly, the whole conversation shifts from the realm of faith and belief into the world of observable, maybe even testable processes.
Okay, so how does this actually work? That's the real question, right? Let's take a few of the most famous universal laws and see what happens when we try to map them onto this new informational physics framework. This is where the rubber meets the road.
First up, we've got a big one. It's a cornerstone in so many traditions, the law of divine oneness. And this is that beautiful idea that, at the deepest level, everything is connected. That you, me, the entire universe, we're all part of one single, magnificent thing.
And check this out. This mapping is just brilliant. What ancient traditions called oneness, this framework translates into the physics of a single, unified field. It's basically saying that you, me, the stars, we're not separate things. We're more like interference patterns, like ripples crossing each other in one giant pond of information. So that feeling of being separate, it's just a local illusion. It's not the fundamental truth.
All right, next up, the law of vibration. You've probably heard this one. It's the idea that absolutely everything in the universe is moving. It's vibrating. Nothing is ever truly still. From the tiniest atom to the biggest galaxy, it's all humming with its own unique frequency. So the question is, why? Why does everything vibrate? Well, according to this model, it's simple. Oscillation, or vibration, is the most stable way for information to even exist. If a pattern of information just sat there, totally static, it would just collapse. It couldn't hold its shape. So vibration isn't some mystical, good vibes only thing. It's a fundamental, physical requirement for anything to exist in an informational universe.
Let's talk about the law of polarity. This one says that everything has an opposite. You've got hot and cold, light and dark, up and down. But here's the crucial part. The law says these aren't actually separate things. They're just two ends of the very same spectrum, two sides of the same coin.
So think about love and fear.
This law says they aren't two different forces at war with each other. They're just 2 points on one emotional spectrum. And what's wild is how perfectly this maps to informational physics. You have coherence, which is basically stable, orderly information, and you have decoherence, which is chaotic, messy information. See? They're not two different things, they're just two different states of the exact same system.
Okay, this next one is a classic. We all know it. As you sow, so shall you reap. The law of cause and effect. It's the simple idea that every single action has a reaction, and that fundamentally, nothing happens by chance.
But here's where this framework takes that simple idea and makes it, well, pretty mind-bending. Forget thinking about it like a straight line of dominoes falling. This model says reality is more like a giant tangled web of information. And in a web, a cause doesn't have to be right next to its effect. As long as 2 points are connected somewhere in that informational network, one can influence the other. It doesn't matter how far apart they are in physical space.
So, okay, we've looked at a few examples. Let's pull back for a second. What does all this actually mean? What's the big takeaway here? What happens when you start to see the universe not as a collection of stuff, but as one massive, self-organizing information system?
This brings us to a really crucial point. Those 12 universal laws we talk about, they're just the surface level. They're like the tip of the iceberg, the part we can see and experience. The real action is happening underneath, driven by these much deeper mechanics of information. Things like coherence, entropy, resonance. The laws aren't the engine, they're the readout on the dashboard. They're the result, not the cause. And get this, the model even provides a potential step-by-step process for how a thought could actually become a thing in the real world. It goes like this. Step 1, you have a thought. That alters the local information around you. Step 2, that change creates a feeling, a specific resonance in the field. Step 3, that feeling then guides your actions. And finally, step 4, those actions create a new outcome. Physical reality literally changes to match that initial informational shift. It's a clear, logical sequence.
So really, here's the bottom line. What this framework suggests is that these laws aren't mystical or magical at all. They are the physics of a coherent reality. You can almost think of them as the user interface for the universe's operating system. They're the predictable set of rules that lets us interact with the deep code that's running everything.
And all of this leaves us with one final, really provocative thought to chew on. If the universe really does operate on a code, are we capable of learning how to read it? And maybe even learning how to write it? Now that's something to think about. Thanks for diving into this with me.